Hello, everybody. Welcome to week one of 3D lighting and comp. Um, this is going to be the first video in a two-part series for week one. In the first video, I'm just going to kind of get you started and show you some of the block out tools and block in a example level. And then you all will do your gray box and block in first, and then you'll turn that in, and then you'll do the mega scan part of the assignment. So this is going to be a two-part series to kind of break this up a little bit because these videos can get a little long. So here we are inside of the Unreal Project browser. To get there, you just have to go to your Epix launcher and launch Unreal Engine. From here, I'm just going to use the third person because this is the easiest way to kind of block in an environment. All the stuff should be kind of set at default. You'll want to go to your drive and just find a place you want this to live. So I'm just going to make a new folder. Week one, part one. And then select that folder, and that's where your project is going to live. And I'm just going to call this week one, part one. And then hit create. And it's going to create your project for you. That build. This may take longer if this is the first time you're kind of starting up Unreal, um, or it may not. It's going to prepare and build some shaders as well. So this is the just kind of the default Unreal. The first thing I typically do is go to Editor Preferences. In the Editor Preferences, I go to Level Editor and then Viewports, and then I invert this middle mouse pan, and this will make it like Maya. It's really annoying. So I would suggest doing that if you're used to Maya or even Blender. And now when I pan, it doesn't look all completely backwards. The default level, if we just hit play, we have a player character in here, and we can run around and jump and do that kind of stuff. And this is just typical kind of like gray boxing in a level, and that's what we're about to go ahead and do. So I'm going to hit escape, and then I'm going to go up to File, New Level, and we're going to start with this basic right here, which will give you some sky and some basic lights. We don't want to use the open world because this brings in tiling and things like that. So we're going to go to basic, hit create, and here's our basic level with nothing in it. Terrific. So what do we do now? So first step is to take a look at our concept art. So I'm going to go and grab my concept art so y'all can look at it. It's going to be a combination of two pieces. This one right here and this one right here. So I like this kind of like dug in tunnel thing, or well or whatever that is. And I really like this gate back here as well. So I do like this wall. So I'm thinking maybe building a wall on each side instead of these rocks, so replacing a rock with a wall. But I'll figure that out as I go through the block out. So I'm just going to pull these over to a side monitor and get started. So typically when I'm doing this, I'll work from the foreground main shapes to the background. It doesn't really matter in the world where we do this. We could even just delete this ground plane, which we're going to do here in a second anyways. So first things first, let's grab some geometry. I'm going to use a cylinder because that well is basically a cylinder. Over here we have our detail panels, so this is where we can change things for this geometry. Um, I'm also going to place a person in the world as well. So if I go on the third person, blueprints, and it's got this BP third person character. If I click on that, grab it out here into the world, we can see that it's listed, or it's got connection to the skeletal mesh. So I'm just going to click this little folder and it's going to take me to that mesh, and then I'm going to drag it out. And then I'm going to get rid of this other one that I dragged out because we don't need another character. We already have our third person. If we hit play, we just don't want two-player characters in there. And you can't see that one while we're laying things out. All right, so let's grab this cylinder. And I want to add some more sides to this thing. So I'm just going to drag that up. And all of this geometry is just block out geometry. So it's just to get our shapes in the right place. If I want this thing to sit on the ground, I just hit the end key, END key, and that'll put it on the ground. And then I'm just going to scale this something like that. By default, you can see that the geometry is snapping. I usually tend to just turn all this stuff off. This is where your snappy controls are. So hit end again, scale this, not snapping off. Hit, hit end. I think this is a good size for that initial shape. And then I'm just going to kind of push it down into the ground like so. And then now that I've got this main kind of piece here, I'm just going to delete our ground plane and just kind of work out from here. So for this well, you can see it kind of has these rings and then it cuts into the ground. So remember, in this point, we do not want detail. We just want a block out. So I'm just going to take this piece, scale it down, scale it vertically, drag it down, and then over here under brush type, I'm going to set that to subtractive, and it's going to cut that well out for us, which is awesome. So next up, I want to kind of build the ground around the well. And to do that, I'm just going to use some boxes, maybe. Let's just start using some boxes. This part of the process is it's very sloppy. It's not exactly fun to watch either, but I think it's good for everybody to understand what's happening here. And then I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and start dragging out a lot more ground. And eventually all of this will just be replaced with high-res geometry. We could do this just with a grid or something as well. These over. And again, this is just how I do it. Everybody's got their own way. You don't have to do it this way. Um, it's fine. This is the best way for me to do it. A couple more in here, and then let's just start going into the ground. The reason why I'm doing boxes instead of a grid is that a grid's just going to get rid of that hole, and that hole I definitely want to keep there. We'll throw in some grids after this. We may even throw in just a landscape object too. I typically don't use landscape objects unless it's just like ground or something, at least in the block in, because with nanite, which we'll talk a little bit about later, we can have super high res ground pieces that look really nice. And it's way better than using the landscape tool. That's good enough. So there's the area around our well. So now I'm going to go ahead and let's see, throw in another box, and then this one's going to be really big. And I'm kind of just looking at the concept art. So I need to just fill out this kind of area around it. So it's not actually too much more. Center and scale. That looks about right. This in. So over to this side. And then pull in our foreground. There. So we can always just hit play, get a feeling for it. If that ever happens and you fall through a hole or something, you just rotate it. It'll send you back. Or you can always grab one of these and just hit the F key and it'll send you back. So next, let's go ahead and deal with our rock formations. There. Thing on this side. Just kind of looking at the concept art and imagining how big those rocks would be. So I think there needs to be a couple of these boxes shoved down in here because there's a bit of a ledge that comes out. You can also go in and grab faces in these. You can just you go in. I can remember how to do this. There's like a brush editing mode right here. Shift 7 will send you in that. And brush editing allows you to start manipulating faces. So I can kind of move these around, skew stuff. Don't spend too much time doing this. Definitely don't get into a poly modeling situation, at least this early on. There's some really cool tools that Unreal has for blocking geo, but they're a little bit more advanced. So if we get back to our selection, there we go. That looks about right. And then I'm going to grab this one and give it a bit of an angle, pull it down. That works. This one I think is good. Just going to do just a reverse angle here. And one thing you want to do with the environments that you're going to be working on for this first project, we want to close it off. We don't want people to be able to kind of escape it. So typically that's just done with like a wall. Could be rocks, could be foliage or whatever. Let's say that's our wall. That. So say this is the back of our environment. This is the front, and it goes off into that gate. So let's go ahead and get the gate in there. This This wall might be a little bit too imposing. Probably make some rocks to fill that in. Also gonna move, if I can find it. Play. There we go. So it's every time they update Unreal, there's some new stuff. So it looks like if your camera, wherever your camera is where your player is going to spawn, which is cool because before we would have to kind of go through and change that. I'm just kind of walking around just to get a feel for what I'm doing here, making sure that it feels right with the concept art. It's super important at this stage to do this, to kind of walk around and get a good feel, because you don't want to wait until much later on to start going thinking about your thinking about scale and things like its scale, specifically scale, and things like that. After you're starting to get high res stuff in there already, you don't want to wait that long. All right, so let's get this gate in here. Say about here. Give it some distance in between that. Scale it up. All right, and then I'm gonna grab one of those first cylinders. Just pull it up. Forget the shortcut key for snapping. I'm gonna snap my angles on just to keep it straight. Pull this back and just kind of look from our composition at the size. I think it needs to be a bit bigger. Ooh, not that way though. Yeah, I think this is about right. And then I'm just going to duplicate it by holding Alt, dragging, scale it down, scale it this way, set it to subtractive, and push it in. I think this probably needs to come up a little bit more, and then this can come up. There we go. And I don't mind about this clipping and stuff back here. It's okay. We're just getting the feel for it. All right, so let's play that. Okay. So then I have to kind of figure out what to do between this wall and this wall. And I think I'm just going to allow it to have a bit of an angle, like a sloped ground. Um, so if I wanted to show a little bit of an uneven ground, what exactly would I do there? So I probably use a landscape object. So we can go up here to landscape, and it's going to give you this huge object here, which we're not going to need. Um, so what we can do is just go ahead and hit create. And this is probably not the fastest way to do it, but this is just how I've learned in the past. And then you can go into these different modes under Manage, Sculpt, and Paint. So if I go to Manage, I can delete. And then I can just go through and just delete all of the excess. that I don't need. And like I said, this is definitely not the easiest or probably the fastest way to do it, but it's just what I've done in the past and it works. So that's how I'm going to do it here. All right, that works for me. So I'm going to go out of landscape mode for a second and just move this. So we can go up here and then under location, just hit 0, 0, 0. And then I'm going to hold down. Ooh, don't crash on me. Hold on a second. Just gonna move this back. There's a way to center the pivot, but I'm not sure. You know what? I'm just gonna undo all this. Let's find. We're gonna find a tile that's actually closer to center. F. There we go. So I'm gonna grab this tile down here. So if I go back in the landscape, I want to keep that one and then get rid of the rest of them. We'll talk about landscapes in depth in this class, but I don't want to get into it too much with this block in because I don't want to scare everybody. Because landscapes can get pretty technical. So let's go down here, take a look. This looks good. I'm just going to kind of throw it a little bit below and then bring it in to here. And again, this is a little bit of an extra step. Um, you could just ignore the ground sloping until you get to your next phase after the block in. But just in case anybody wants to know how to do this, I wanted to show you. So now if I go back to landscape and go to sculpt, we can see we've got a brush here. And let's bring the brush size way down. And then I can start to raise in some of that ground in here. I'm not going to do it too much. I just want to give you a general idea. So now if I wanted to, I can just kind of bring this area that's behind this wall, I can just kind of bring it up so it's harder for someone to see what's outside here. Like so. So now if I go back to my play, we can see we've got this, whoop, almost fell through the ground. We've got this kind of area that blocks the player. They can't really, I mean, you can escape here, but that's okay. And that's basically it. That's the first part of this assignment. Um, I want you to build basically an outdoor area like this. You can use whatever concept art that you want. The ones that I use were through Midjourney. Um, as long as you're not saying it's your own artwork, I have no problem with you guys using AI to generate. I'd much prefer you use AI than just steal something off of ArtStation or lift something off of ArtStation. And that's it. Very short and sweet. This shouldn't take you very long. Spend some time though walking around your level, getting it blocked in. Um, and I look forward to seeing everybody's environments. Thank you very much.